Somebody in YouTube chat asks, why are GMOs good? Okay, I just want to cover this right off the bat, okay? GMOs are dope as hell, okay? All the food that we eat nowadays has been genetically modified. Bananas, strawberries, wheat, all of it, when we found it in the earth, originally, when we started cultivating it, it sucked. They sucked. They were shitty. They were hard to grow outside of a very specific climate. They barely produced any yield. They were unreliable. We selectively bred these plants to make them better. We made all of our fruit better and juicier and more efficient. All of it's good. And all this is through natural evolutionary processes, okay? Genetically modified organisms can include, like, direct genetic modifications, or it can just be, like, selective breeding of different plants, you know, depending on, like, how it's actually being done. GMOs can be a problem, but in the same way that, like, literally any kind of industrial process can be a problem, where things can be over-designed or there can be negative externalities. There are issues with GMOs right now, but a lot of them are political. So, for example, intellectual property laws when it comes to GMOs are kind of fucked, because you can copyright a genetic strain of banana, and then, like, you can't make the banana. Like, only one company can make that banana, because that banana is patented. And then, like, if their extremely virile seed lands in your farm, you can't harvest the bananas that are theirs because it's their banana. That's a real thing that's happened, by the way. Like, the point of genetically modified pipes. Sorry, I was looking at my crack pipe, which I love dearly. The point of genetically modified seeds is that they're very resilient. I mean, that's one of the things that you value in them, right? You want them to, like, withstand climate change and be able to be grown pretty much anywhere. So as a product of that, you'll have situations where, like, you'll have adjacent, like, farm plots. You guys know this has happened, right? You'll have adjacent farm plots where the very, like, efficient GMO fruit or whatever will spread to neighboring plots, but legally those farmers can't, like, integrate that into their crop rotation. It's like a weed to them, but it's better than any weed. It's more efficient, and it goes to waste, and, like, then there are legal issues because it's like that's patented to them. Like, most of the issue with GMOs is a legal thing. It's a problem with capitalism. But in terms of, like, how do we produce enough food to feed the human species, GMOs are critical. Like, it's inarguable. If you want to, unless you want, like, the biggest famine in the history of the species, you need GMOs. And they're fine. They don't, like, harm you in any way. Your body is not in any way hurt by eating a fruit that has undergone selective mutations to be better of the fruit that it is. That's totally okay. It's not gonna hurt you. And organic fertilizers are fine. Now, there are pesticides and fertilizers that are very, very, very damaging to the environment, and we've been trying to restrict their use. America is behind Europe in a lot of cases on this. There are fertilizers and pesticides in Europe that are banned because they're bad for the environment that we in America still use. It's an ongoing process to try to ban these all out. What's with the crack pipe? We're watching a Russell Brand video. But yeah, look at, like, can I find, like, non-GMO, like, watermelon? Like, everything used to suck. Let me see. Original banana. Can I get, like, yeah, pre-domestication bananas were like this. They were, like, I think they were really bitter, and they were full of seeds, and they were really small. They were like plantations, but worse, basically. Yeah, they kind of sucked. Original wild strawberries. I think they were like this. Like, original strawberries were really small. Like, they looked more like other berries, I think. Where they were kind of like, yeah, they were like that. Like, modern strawberries are, like, several times larger and more nutrient dense. Original wild wheat. This is the big one, right? Because a ton of people rely on wheat and stuff. Yeah. Yeah, here we go. Wild wheat versus later domesticated varieties. You can see right here that the original wild wheat, in terms of, like, the size and quantity of the grains, were dog shit compared to what we have right now. Like, look, like, imagine, like, if you have a country where you're trying to, like, feed hundreds of millions of people, imagine, like, yeah, your yield is this, and it can only be grown in some times of the year in some environments, and it's not as reliable, and it's more vulnerable to disease and pesticides and shit, or like bug infection. And then, like, you've this over here, literally, like, 10 times the usable material per harvest, and it grows faster. Original wild corn. Look at corn, man. Corn's come a long way. Look at, like, literally. Guys, we have your non-GMO corn. We have your ready organic corn Enjoy. You can tell which one's the old and which one's the new. I hope. Oh, this is great. Who linked this? Was that Fox Potato? Look, original watermelons in a painting. These were domesticated recently enough that we have paintings from a few hundred years ago of what they used to be like. See? The rind would extend all the way into the core and like a radial, like hexagon. The usable meat would just be like little bites full of seeds into it. And now our watermelons are literally like a perfect like basketball of watermelon meat with a tiny bit of rind on the end, you know? Isn't that incredible? This right here, like, unironically, this is like a miracle of human ingenuity. There's no harm to the environment being done here. Nothing has been made worse. No damage has been done. It's just a straightforward improvement of existing resources. And we did it through careful genetic manipulation of these plants. Olive oil. GMOs refer to selective breeding as well. A lot of what people say when they say GMO, these aren't examples of GMOs. No, GMOs refer to these selective breeding processes as well. When people like fearmonger about GMOs, they think there's some like magical other thing that's happening. But in reality, it's just a combination of processes that are made to selectively choose some genetic characteristics over others. There are types of GMOs that are like more mutagenic fucking like Frankenstein type stuff. But that is not as common as people think. A lot of what people talk about is just stuff like this. It's like how organic doesn't have a real definition. Yeah, organic doesn't have like a real, yeah. GMOs decrease biodiversity. That can be an issue, but a lot of that has to do with our farming practices, not with the actual act of making our food more, useful to us. When regular people talk about GMO, they refer to modern genetic changes like making fruit bigger at the expense of taste and nutrients. But we've done that though. The process of making fruit bigger at the expense of taste and nutrients is a thing that you can do through selective breeding. If you're looking to select for large, it's the same. Like here, nationalgeographic.org. A GMO is an animal, plant, or microbe whose DNA has been altered using genetic engineering techniques. For thousands of years, humans have used breeding methods to modify organisms. Corn, cattle, and even dogs have been selectively bred over generations to certain desired traits. However, in the last few decades, modern advances in biotechnology have allowed scientists to directly modify the DNA of microorganisms, crops, and animals. So people think that this is something fundamentally different. It's just a way of speeding up the prior process. It's possible through natural selection and breeding to produce genetically aberrant types of corn or like whatever else, you know? The only difference is that we've gotten better at it. But changing DNA through thousands of years of selective crop breeding and changing through DNA through direct modification isn't like a fundamentally different process. We've just changed the methods by which we do it. It's not like there's not like a magic, thing. And the negative things that can come about from modern forms of genetic alteration could also happen with older forms. It's just that over thousands of years, we've mostly discarded with the failed experiments, you know? That's what science is. Eugenics is wrong, full stop, Vaush. Yeah. I think what they mean is that GMOs turn the frogs gay. I mean, so to try to back this up a little bit, to be a little bit more clear, I don't mean to say that there can't be negative consequences to genetically altering organisms. There were negative consequences even to the older process of doing it through selective breeding. Both have the potential to lead the genetic characteristics of a food in a bad direction, which can lead to environmental consequences and a reduction of biodiversity. However, the alteration of the gene code of the food that we eat has been necessary for human survival, and for human civilizations to flourish. So the question is, can we do GMOs responsibly? And the answer is, for the most part, yeah, we have. Overwhelmingly, the influence of both old and new methods of changing the way that our food grows have been to the benefit of our species. I find most of the issues with GMOs, in both the old and new sense, are legal ones. They're issues with how we use the technology, how we apply it. But it's necessary that we do so, that we use this technology, because we simply cannot sustain our population if we get away with the process. The danger is not the process. The danger is the material choices being made in the context of the process. Yeah, like you have to select for good things. Yeah, so that's the hope. You're not wrong that most of the issues are legal ones, but it's not true that genetic manipulation is just sped up selective breeding. On a fundamental level, you're simply using a new and more expansive set of tools to make the same types of changes that we've always been able to do. We can do them faster, and we can do them in a wider range. We can experiment with a broader set of parameters, but it's the same basic type of change. The only reason I'm hammering on this is because people often believe that there's like organically changing the DNA of a plant and like artificially changing the DNA of a plant. But that distinction really isn't like a meaningful one in terms of the actual alterations made. Natural selective processes can produce things that are biologically unviable, and direct genetic alterations can produce changes that are common sense and useful. No, Vaush, we're literally combining genes of different species. Selective breeding preserves the genes. Wait, what? Cross-mixing different types of plants to produce hybrids has been a thing for, I don't know if it's been thousands of years. It's at the very least hundreds of years. Yeah, we've done that. That's not new at all. I know people in my subreddit are going to be furious with me because I don't have like a PhD level understanding of this subject, but yeah, in my experience, you can't cross mix like GMO can. Yeah, well, direct genetic alterations allow for more specificity and more range in how you make these changes, but you're still making changes to the gene code. There's nothing wrong with that. Like people like it's the same, like it's the same thing you're doing. You're trying to affect the same basic set of processes. You're just doing it with a more precise, more expansive set of tools. Genes are just data. There's no such thing as a gene belonging to a species. Yeah, like DNA is DNA. You know, you mix and match, yeehaw. All right, let's keep going. I'm just explaining GMO is distinct from selective breeding for a good reason, but it doesn't mean it's bad. It's distinct in that it allows us more power in achieving the same ends we've been attempting to achieve through selective breeding. We're simply improving upon the processes that humans have had for a long time. Please, Vaush, I urge you to look up CRISPR. I know about CRISPR. You're just wrong about current techniques being the same but faster. It's not the same. They can select any DNA code to insert into a chosen place in the DNA code. That is not how we're improving our corn. We're not putting corn in the CRISPR box to like put like wolf DNA into the corn to like create Frankenstein. The changes that we're making to existing crops are ones that are in line with attempted processes. Did I say wolf corn? Wolf DNA that we've been trying to do through selective like processes. The tools are stronger, but we're trying to do the same basic thing. That's all I'm saying. Wait, if I recall correctly, crop breeding is done with CRISPR. Yeah, I'm saying they don't put wolf DNA in. No, chat, please. God help me. Why are you resisting chat just correcting you? Because the joke was that we're not putting, like, dog knots in our... Like, the person was implying that through CRISPR, we're, like, making these crazy alterations that... everything we're doing now, we were trying to do before. If people in the 18th century had access to CRISPR technology, they would be using the shit out of it. Also, even if you're splicing tiny bits of gene material, that's not like... I guess I just want to know what people who are anti-GMO think is being done to our crops. Like, what changes are being made to the genetic code of our crops that they think are harmful to us? Because I always get this, like, extremely arbitrary, yeah, they make you gay, autism, whatever. Like, I don't know what they think's being done. The alterations that are being done are the same that have always been done. Guys, who was in charge of determining the like, gene of crop yields that were used back hundreds of years ago? What interests were served? Those of the aristocracy. Obviously, funding the research, applying it, everything. It's not like the common serfs were like, yeah, you know, we're tracking genetic alterations to the wheat yields, and we think that applying this in a, you know, tri-seasonal rotation will be the most... No, things were being done to maximize the output for the benefit of the elite. Why do modern farmers use given strains of wheat or whatever else? Because they sell the best at market, so you have to maximize for qualities like... taste and size and yield and resilience and so on and so forth. It's the same basic priorities that are being done. Our ancestors were not intentionally reducing genetic diversity to make a profit. No, they were unintentionally. Nobody is intentionally reducing genetic diversity. It's just a byproduct. It was an accidental product of what happens when you make sick-ass superfoods like we do. They absolutely were doing that, though. Nothing is new. Nothing fundamental has changed. We're just doing better at the same thing we've always been doing. Why would the elites need more corn if not to give it to more farmers? Because it's in the benefit of the elites in feudal societies if they have robust stores of grain to survive winter. We just want you to be more careful in making statements about science. I don't think I've said anything that's incorrect here, except for when I made a joke about splicing wolf DNA with wheat, and people interpreted that as me saying that CRISPR isn't used on wheat. I don't actually think I've said anything inaccurate. GMOs make direct changes to genes. Selective breeding relies on random changes. That's incorrect. Okay, if selective breeding relies on random changes, but you only keep the outputs that have the desired outcomes, isn't that the same as making direct changes, just stretched over a longer period of time? Like, you're still doing the same thing. It's not as though with the that's selective breeding. That's why it's selective breeding. In both cases, you're making genetic alterations. And guys, you can do some wild shit just with selective breeding, okay? You know how pugs can barely breathe because their neck fat is choking them out and their nose is recessed into their skull? We produced that with selective breeding. We can selective breed wild shit. It's not like only direct gene editing allows for some wacky stuff, okay? We've always had the power to produce types of plants and animals that are biologically unviable. That's always been something we've done. You can look throughout history. There have been famines caused by stuff like this. Poor understanding of the genetic output, the yield, the what have you. You know, this isn't new. We're just doing it better. I understand the tools are different, but you guys need to understand the difference between the tools being different and the thing being different. That's why that National Geographic article that we looked at began talking about GMOs by referring to selective breeding, because it's the same fundamental process. People are just fear-mongering over new technology allowing for the same basic thing. It's the same basic thing. It's not scary. Everything that's scary about modern GMOs has existed before modern GMOs. Maybe we can do it more now, but that's what happens when tools get stronger. You have the potential for more good to be done and more harm to be done, but it's the same basic thing. Can we move on, please? Monsantos do GMO that can't grow without their fertilizer? Yeah, like I said, that'd be a legal issue. That's like a capitalism thing, not a GMO thing.